Hey, welcome back to my channel, Treetop Flight, where I'm documenting the build of my RANS S21 Outbound. This is the second video on the wings, but it's not going to be the final one. When I started my wings, I had 135 hours into the build. By the end of this video, I will have put in another 65 hours on the wings, bringing my total build time to 200 hours. This does not include the time I spent researching topics, watching other builders' videos, and researching how to edit and make these videos. The wings are definitely a big chunk of the build, so let's get into it. The wing frame assembly is just about complete, but I'm preparing to put some skins on now. I'm going to put the top skin on as there's a little bit more work I need to do, but I can access that before I put the bottom skin on. The couple little follow-ups I need, I'm waiting for some parts. The follow-up that I need is I've got to run my electrical wire for my landing light and my wingtip light. I've got grommets in place. I'll be using 18 gauge non-shielded wire. A lot of discussion. It's another one of those heavily discussed topics. Some people use the shield as the ground. Others have said, well, that's not really the right way to do it. The other thing I want to do is I don't like the way this pitot tube is hanging. The RANS instructions tell you to use a wire tie, somewhat like I've done, and then wrap tape around as a protector. I don't have any tape that lasts more than a couple years. Electrical tape, anything I've taped 4 or 5 years later, it's coming off. So I'm going to redo the hanging system for the pitot tube. I'm going to put that in my pitot tube video, which is separate from the wing. But I'm waiting to get that done. But other than that, everything else is ready. So the first thing the manual has you do is you go through a checklist, and this is clearly worth it. Going through checking, make sure all your rivets are in, everything's attached, everything's the way it's supposed to be. Be careful, because the very first thing says make sure your truss is attached. But there's 2 sets of rivets that you leave out that you've got to remember from the beginning. You're leaving out the line of rivets for the gap seal. There's a straight line that runs all the way down your aft spar, and it's kind of a straight line. You can see it. So all the center rivets for your angle brackets, your ribs, and everything are left out. And then the other thing is, don't forget, do not rivet your inner root rib, because that's got to get removed to put your tank in. So this one attaches on this side, so there's a line of rivets here that's clecoed, and a line in the back. Leave those clecoed and do not rivet, because you need to remove that rib to put your gas tank in. So follow your checklist, and then following your checklist, there's a new set of instructions. I've got it all set, and I'm going to start with my skins. I think the next thing, next page is the top skin, and you got to remove the wing from the table and start fabricating your leading edge with the tool, and I'll get into that in a minute as soon as I get my wing safely removed from my table. I've removed the wing from the table. It takes at least 2 people and some real delicate movement on that, but the truss holds it pretty stiff. Then I've laid the top skin on the table, being real careful not to crease it or bend it, otherwise you'll be getting shipped a new skin. Clamping it to my work table using a bunch of variety of clamps and some wood. This helps hold the skin in place while we form this edge. You want about 2 3/4 inches on this edge. That's the edge we're going to form. And there's a couple forming tools. This is the one that RANS sent in the tool kit, kind of some vice grips with some parts welded. I struggled with these on the last forming. Saw one of these online, and my son did a CAD of it and drew it up, and I 3D printed it. It works real well. I use PETG material. If any of you do 3D printing, little give to it than the PLA. So this should work. I've seen others use a bandsaw and some wood and cut this into a piece of wood using a bandsaw, but this should work well. And then we just insert it. We run it down the edge, and we put a slight curl in the edge of the skin so that it will fit to the forward spar. After pulling the forming tool all the way down the skin, you get a very slight little bend to it, but that's all you need. You just want it to come down and make sure it's not bending up when it comes in contact with the forward spar. I've laid the wing back up on the table with the top side up. I've put the top side skin on top. And then for number 6, they say make sure the wing is square to the table. Watched a lot of other videos. Haven't really seen a lot of people spend time squaring. I thought, how am I going to square this? So I came up with 3 different methods. And I don't know, maybe I'm too anal on this one. So the first method is assuming my tabletop is square, using all squared lumber, that the tops came down and they're square and they're square. Not 100% accurate because there could be some distance off. So I did measure the distance from each tip to the end and each tip to the side and made sure that it sat squarely on the table. That seemed to work. Then I clecoed the 4 corners right at the rib, assuming RANS has drilled this with a laser drill and have all these rivet holes are squared. If the 4 corners are in, then the 2 ribs have got to be, or the 2 spars have got to be the same distance apart. So that means they should be squared. Still wasn't satisfied with that. In construction, to determine whether our framing, we measure corner to corner. So in a rectangle, if you measure one corner to the other corner and then do the same thing the other way, if those are not the same distance and you have a parallelogram rather than a rectangle, my last tool is to use the old 3, 4, 5 construction method, which is basically a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That'll give you, if those work out, you've got a right angle. So if I measure down this spar a distance, let's say 8 feet is a squared, and then I measure a distance from here over to here, let's say that it turns out to be 3 feet, a squared plus b squared, I draw a vertical, and that should be exactly the c squared amount. Well, the a squared plus b squared equals c squared method worked. The next leveling, they say, is to check for twist in the wing. This is a little simpler. I'm laying a 4-foot level across the 2 spars, the leading edge spar and the trailing edge spar. Obviously, you can't count on a liquid bubble dot to get within any degree of accuracy. Good for building framing and houses, but not so good for leveling airplane wings. So we go to a digital level. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay our level on top, the digital level on top of my other level, because the 4 foot's going to give me the span. And I've got an angle of 2.1 degrees. So I'm going to go down to the other end, and we've got to be within a decimal point. I think it's a tenth of a degree to determine level. If I'm not off level, I won't show the whole video into this because it's kind of obvious, then I will shim either end necessary to get so that we're in 1/10 of a degree level on both sides. And so I was off just a little bit. This is at 2.5 degrees. So I do need to shim this side up just a little bit. Item 10 on the text manual says, place the stringers in place on the wing ribs. Stringers will have to be trimmed and will be cut short of the rim flanges. They don't tell you how short, and they don't give you on the RANS video, it's not that clear. So I've placed my stringer in. My skin is still up here, and I've got a cleco to the wing to keep it from sliding off. Being a one-man operation, taking this skin on and off, I got to keep calling people to come help me. So I'm just holding the skin up here while I do it. So this isn't exactly the way they show it, but I'm thinking it'll work. So if I pull the stringer, if I pull the stringer all the way to the rib, you can see the first hole is got to be riveted to the skin. And then the last hole is actually beyond the rib, so I can see why they say we need to trim it. But there are stringer holes on the skin, which clearly indicate that the skin is going to get riveted to these stringer holes. So the way I'm going to do it, they don't really tell you how, is I'm going to lay the stringer up here. Here's my line of stringer holes for the rivets. I'm going to lay my stringer up on top of the skin. That will show me where my stringer needs to end, and then I can trim the other end doing the same thing, seeing where the last hole is on the skin. After you do that to all three stringers, and then you actually rivet the stringer to the skin, not cleco, but actually rivet it to the skin before you lay the skin back down and start match drilling your leading edge holes. So that seems to work. I haven't found any other directions on this stringer riveting, and that's what I'm going to do. If anyone has a better idea, feel free to comment down below for future builders, or if at the end, if I figure something else out, I'll post it on the end of the video what I did. Well, I am kind of laughing at myself when I saw my sweatshirt in some of the videos. You know, clearly it's a good old sweatshirt. I got my propane heater on in the garage here, keeping the garage warm. But you can't throw away a good construction sweatshirt. They're worth their weight in gold. So I laugh at myself when I notice this is in the videos, but that's just the way I am. For you one-person builders, my method worked. I did cut the spar, or the stringer, got it up underneath, started my clecoing from the ends. Anyone who doesn't have one of these tools, pick this up. This is to line up your future holes as you move down, and it kind of pulls them into place. Great tool. You find them in the automotive section of like Pep Boys or something like that. They're used for gasket scrapers, but they're not too expensive. This one was like $3 or $4. So, but invaluable, absolutely invaluable for lining up your ribs or your stringers or whatever you need to do to get your rivets in. But this worked. I just have the skin sitting on top of the wing, and gave myself some room to work over here, and then got the stringer clecoed. Now the riveting's a no-brainer. And then I'll do the same thing for the next two stringers. There's three stringers on this top skin. Okay, slight change in process. In looking ahead a couple steps and then reading back, they want you to put the stringer into the groove and rivet it with the skin on top in place. And I had the skin out of place and was just riveting the stringer in. So I stopped riveting on the one stringer. I attached the other two stringers, fit them in place to where they fit into the slot, and I'm picking up with my clecoing. Well, clecoing's done at this point, and now I'm going to continue with my riveting and get the rest of the rivets into the stringers. The stringers are riveted, if you can see down there. I've got 3 rows of rivets. These are the Avex rivets. They're a little different than the Cherry Qs, I believe. Did a little research on Avex. I think they have a bigger mushroom at the bottom. I'm not an expert on that, so don't quote me, but they're a little different than the Cherry Qs. Then after that, you cleco the skin to your ribs and frame assembly. If any of you were wondering when you were going to get to cleco level 201, this is it. Remember all those kind of wiggly ribs that you were sitting with your frame assembly, kind of wondering, how am I going to get the skin onto these wiggly ribs that don't seem perfectly straight as they sit here? Even though you fluted them, they're not perfectly straight. Well, this is where you develop Cleco 201, Graduation Celebrate. This is a bear. Takes a while to get all the ribs lined up, get the Clecos in. But got to get there. Then from here, we're going to, I believe, start drilling out, match drilling the front spar. And I think you start from the middle and work out. I'll double check the directions, but or the manual. I'm pretty sure that's where we're at. I'm drilling out the front spar, match drilling it to a number 30, and definitely push down with your thumb and close that gap just a little bit. It'll move just enough, but it'll create a nice tight seal from that bend that you've put in the skin. So just moving from the inside out and match drilling number 30 all the way out. The forward spar is match drilled to number 30 all the way along, all the way back. The next thing is I'm going to remove, per the manual, the first 4 rows of clecos up the skin, and I'm going to dimple the skin and countersink the spar for a flush rivet. This is your dimpling tool. Check your bit, make sure it's the 120-degree bit, and then you're just going to clamp yourself along the skin and dimple each of the holes. The manual says to take the clecos out up about 4 rows. I didn't like the way the skin was bending at 4 rows, so I went a little further. I took the clecos out all the way up to the first rib. Then I supported the skin with a little bit of lumber under there. I'm going to countersink. Make sure you got the 120-degree. Check your depth level. This is adjustable. So you want to make sure. I did one on a piece of practice aluminum. Then I just put a couple in here, and they seem like we're in good shape. Pulled the skin down. They seem to match well. So we'll move along and countersink the leading spar. Skins are dimpled. Spar is countersunk. Then the deburring, that's all done. You got to go under there and clean all the stuff out and deburr them. Now we're going to put some tank supports in where the fuel tanks go in the root of the wing. So we'll work on the tank supports. Hey, yay! The UPS guy just showed up with my 2024 T3.050 sheet of aluminum. Laugh out loud. When you start fabricating brackets and stuff, you'll need some aluminum. I did as much research on that as I've done in others. I need to do a video on aluminum. 2024 seems to be a good workable aluminum. 6061 is not supposed to be bent, although there are some people using it. But after research, I think what I found was 2024 T3 is the best. .050 is good for brackets and miscellaneous parts. So I got a small 2x2 sheet. I think it came from Aircraft Spruce. I can't remember which one I ordered it from. About 15 bucks. Plus I included with some other stuff, delivery charge. But handy to have around. I'm going to use it on my pitot 2 bracket, which I'll do a video on. But just so excited to get more deliveries. I've clecoed the fuel tank supports to the top skin. They're kind of a bear to get in. You got to work with the 2 ribs, this rib here and the root rib. Remember, they're a little bit squirrely already, so you got to get these things lined up. So now you got a skin, a rib, and a tank support. You got 3 items to get lined up and get that cleco in. So again, you're in cleco 201 by this point, so you should have no problem with it. But there's 4 of them that go across the top of the wing. Okay, we're getting the wing riveted. The first thing to do is start with the leading edge rivets. These are the flush stainless steel rivets, as opposed to aluminum rivets you'll use for the rest of the top skin. Something about the steel rivets that I've learned is that I'm using a pneumatic rivet gun supplied in the RANS toolkit. I really like this rivet gun. I have no complaints about it. But with the stainless steel, you got to put your pressure up to about 95 to 100 pounds. It's rated for 90 pounds, but I figure they built some margin of error in there. At 85 pounds, if you pull the rivet, it leaves the mandrel, and you got to strike it a second time. At about 95 pounds, I don't have any problem with it at all. Just a little tip I learned. Oh, and when you're riveting, without glasses, it gets harder. Make sure you push down a little bit on your gun, because you want this skin flat and not bubbled to make sure that skin is pressed. The clecos do a pretty good job, but give that a little extra press. Your leading edge will support it. But some tips I learned on the riveting the front, or the skins. Now to rivet the rest of the wing, onward and upward. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to spend a couple seconds talking about riveting this top skin. It's taken me a little more time than I expected. Each individual rivet, I'm finding about a third of them, I've got to work them. Even when I've got two clecos on either side, when I go to put the rivet in, a lot of times that rivet's not going in. Even if I push down, get it pushed in, and I struggle with it to get that in, a lot of times you got to get your hand underneath, you got to hold your brace or your rib and make sure that rivet is coming all the way through and getting flush before you rivet. One of these corner rivets with a brace, I pushed the rivet down, kind of worked it through, put my hand underneath, and I realized that the brace had gotten pushed down by the rivet, and if I had riveted, I would have popped the rivet and missed the brace and left the brace kind of at an angle down. So get your hand under as many as you can, make sure that rivet is through the brace, and then hold your connection before you rivet. Push down your rivet gun in the skin, holding from underneath. All of these along here, you can reach under this way without a problem. Sometimes you've got to use the inspection cover. And a lot of times, a couple times, I found that no matter how hard I worked it, I was not able to get the rivet in. I ended up holding from underneath, match drilling to my 30, and then riveting at that point. I haven't seen many videos comment on this issue. They've kind of just said rivet your top skin. It's individually, this is taking a lot of time because a lot of rivets you got to work and make sure they're in tight. So just an observation, thought I would point it out. The the top skin is riveted to the wing, except for the root rib, which you've got to leave open or unriveted for your fuel tank installation, and the last 4 rows along the trailing edge, which will be for the gap seal. And I haven't riveted the tip rib. I wasn't 100% sure if the wingtip needed this last row. For the other tail wings or tail feathers, you actually use the last row of rivets to install your tips. In this case, I did recheck the manual. You can go ahead and rivet these. The wingtip has its own piece that mounts to this rib, and then the wingtip is then mounted to that piece. So I do have to finish this last row, and we'll move on to the gap seal. I'm going to wrap this video up here. The next video will continue on with the gap seal, the ailerons, flaps, wiring, and more. Thanks for watching.